Hello and welcome to Understanding the Key Essentials of a 501c3. My name is Samira Gonzalez and I'll be your facilitator for this training. During this training, I will go over the organizational overview for My Friend's Place, documents and governance, organization activities, fines and penalties, and conclude. Well, before we start discussing the organization overview, let's talk about what a 501c3 is. A 501c3 is a nonprofit organization formed to carry out a charitable, religious, literacy, educational, or scientific purpose that is recognized by the IRS or the Internal Revenue Service as tax exempt. There are three types of qualified charities. There are public charities, private foundations, and private operating foundations. So for the purpose of My Friend's Place, they are a 501c3 charitable and educational organization. They were established in 1988 and had the original name of the Lighthouse. They became incorporated with the formal name of My Friend's Place in 1990, and that's when they became or were established as a 501c3. The organization serves youth that are experiencing homelessness between the ages of 12 and 25, and their mission is to uplift all youth who are experiencing homelessness. My Friend's Place has been in service for roughly 33 years, and their main focus is to help youth who are experiencing homelessness. And what you see here is a picture that was back in 1988 that shows how the organization actually became established. They started off by serving and providing services out of the trunk of their cars. They currently have roughly 1,000 volunteers each year to help. You also see a picture of their current location as well as their staff. They have more than 30 staff that supports these youth individuals, and they are growing. What are the documents and governance needed for a 501c3? Let's dive in. So the documents and governance required for My Friend's Place is one, the Article of Incorporation. And the Article of Incorporation is a set of legal documents required for business owners to obtain their entity as a corporation. The second important document are the bylaws. The bylaws is a document of an organization that contains its rules of operation. The third document is a determination letter, and this is a formal documentation received from the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, to provide or to show proof that the company is indeed approved as a 501c3. The fourth is a Form 990, and this form needs to be filed for all organizations who has $50,000 or more in cash receipts. The next section will walk you through these documents for My Friend's Place. So the first form that I would like to walk you through is the Articles of Incorporation. Within this Article of Incorporation, if I were to provide this or present this to the board, the first thing that I will identify is to the board is the name in which this nonprofit was registered under. It's mfplace.inc. And then I will highlight Section 3 that states that the nonprofit is organized and operated exclusively for charitable and educational purposes. And then also within this section, identify and flag that the activities of the organization shall not consist of lobbying, propaganda, or influence, or receive any influence from legislation or political campaign. So here's an example of a bylaw. Currently, My Friend's Place does not have a bylaw established on their website. Therefore, we've put together a sample to walk you through various sections that will help you understand what to look for bylaws. So the first section of all bylaws, it gives you an overview. It tells you that this particular nonprofit is following the Nonprofit Corporation Act. It tells you that this is a bylaw based off of articles and gives you the name of the organization. The next section is underneath articles. There's various sections, but for the purposes of this sample, it tells you the general process, and then it goes into the number of directors that a particular entity will have. The next document is the determination letter. For this particular nonprofit, I was unable to locate the determination letter. However, they are underneath, or they're part of the publication 78 data, which is a list of organizations that is eligible to receive tax deductions as a charitable contribution. Within this file, you can do a download and you can identify the organization, and that's what you see here is the actual download of the CSV file. It highlights that MF Place Inc. is part of it. And then the deductible code of PC lets us know that it is charitable contribution. Next form is the 990 form, and the first area is the name associated with the nonprofit. It shows that the nonprofit goes underneath two names, one in which is registered with the IRS, and that is the MF Place Inc. However, they're doing business as My Friend's Place. Also identifying that they have an EIN number, flagging that this nonprofit is registered as a 501c3, and then establishing the funding balances from the beginning and prior year. For most 501c3, their governance consists of boards of directors, executive directors, management staff, volunteers, and contractors. As it pertains to My Friend's Place, they have 20 directors, 2 co-presidents, 1 executive director, 1 secretary, and 1 treasurer. The next section of this training will be on organization activities. Organizational activities refers to any event used by companies to help businesses create profit or income. And this information is found on the statement of activities. In this particular example, what you see is the My Friend's Place statement of activities, and the first thing you see is there is a column that's without donor restriction, and then there's another one with donor restriction. There's a section that tells you the revenues between these two entities of without and with donor restriction. You also have the expense section, and then it tells you the overall assets for My Friend's Place for the end of the year. To the statement of activities, My Friend's Place also has other organizational activities that they must follow. One, they're required to file the form 990 or 990EZ, and this form is usually due to the IRS on May 15th, or if May 15th falls on a Sunday, it is due on that following Monday. They also must have or maintain great record keeping. This means that they must have permanent records such as their articles of incorporation, their Form 1023, IRS determination letter, as well as the application. Since My Friend's Place has employees, they must also have employment files on record, which is the 941, the 940, the W-2, and the I-9. And they must keep these records on file for a total of 4 years. For contractual payments, they also must maintain documentation of the Form 1099 and 943. You can find additional information by going to www.irs.gov for these particular forms. The next area to discuss are fines and penalties. When it pertains to fines and penalties for a nonprofit, there are particular areas in which we need to be aware of. One is the UBIT, or the Unrelated Business Income Tax, gaming, lobbying and political campaigning, and charitable donations. But before we go into those and provide examples, let's give an overview of what fines and penalties are. So if an organization fails to report a return by the due date, including any extension of time, they must pay a penalty of $20 per day for each day the return is late. The same penalty applies for organizations that does not have information required on the return or does not give the correct information. When it pertains to nonprofits such as My Friend's Place, one of the main forms in which we've learned throughout this training is Form 990, and the failure to file this form consecutively for 3 years can revoke your exemption status. In addition, if you have any contractor payment forms, or such as the 1099 or the 945, and this form has bad tax IDs, that can cause a penalty of $100 per each document and up to $500,000 for an organization with gross receipts of $5 million. So as I stated before, we're going to walk through some examples that pertains to My Friend's Place that flag areas for them to be aware of when it pertains to, once again, the UBIT, gaming, lobbying and political campaigning, and charitable donations. So an area of risk associated with this nonprofit is the UBIT, or Unrelated Business Income Tax. And what I found interesting on their 990 form is that this nonprofit receives or is part of the continuum of care that provides free food, free clothing, and medical assistance. However, based off of my experience working with grants, it can take some time for grants to roll in. Therefore, costs could be covered using other revenues received, which in turn could cause for there to be unrelated business income associated with these particular items, such as food, clothes, etc. Next area of risk is gaming, and as you can see here, this nonprofit actually does charities associated with gaming. They have bingo, and this can also be seen as a particular way in which the nonprofit can receive income and or hide particular funding received. This particular nonprofit, in their articles of incorporation, it states that they will not be or shall not have any lobbying or political campaigning. However, this nonprofit receives roughly 90% of their funding are associated from private funds. And if you look at section part 2 of their Form 990, it shows that there's entertainment. It identifies this section as being fundraising events, And although it may not be tied to lobbying or political campaigning per se, um, it could, the entertainment aspect of it could be questioned, especially if there is a political party who is coming in to provide training for individuals whom they're serving and or their employees. So another area of concern is charitable deductions. And as we see here, this organization receives grants, and then they also have another miscellaneous item notated on their 990 form. Now, the charitable deductions can be associated with a multitude of things, and just to be on the safe side, the organization seems to have noted. However, they didn't really give any specifications or details of what this other expenses are or their charitable contributions. What they flagged within their 990 form is that, upon request, will this information or detail be provided? In conclusion, we've gone over a lot of information. One are on documents and governance. The others are on organization activities, as well as fines and penalties. But the key things or key takeaways from this training is nonprofits must keep all required documents. And those required documents are the articles of incorporation, the determination and application, as well as their Form 990. They also must keep all employee forms, and these forms consist of the 941, 941, 940 W-2s, as well as I-9. They must keep all contractual or contractor payment forms, which is the form 1099 and 945. And they must report all direct expenses that they're receiving. Here are a few references for some of the forms discussed throughout this training. This concludes our training. Thank you. If you have any follow-up questions or want to find out more information regarding nonprofit 501c3, you can always reach me at my email that I have here, which is samira.gonzalez@calbaptist.edu. Thank you once again, and have a great day.